Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to share a 10-minute or so extract from a speech I gave earlier this year. And you're going to hear me talking about the nodes, the North Node and the South Node. You're going to hear me talking specifically about the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio. You also hear me talk a little bit about transits from the North Node or the South Node. In this talk, I also share some info about how Venus and Mars are really important with the nodes transiting through the signs of Taurus and Scorpio. What else do I talk about? I touch on a very little bit of Buddhism. We talk about the concepts of our physical body, our emotional feelings. We talk about togetherness. We talk about healing and release. I'm also going to talk a little bit about pleasure and pain. I cover a lot in this talk or this extract that you're about to hear. The full speech was about 45 minutes. So I'm just going to give you this kind of very juicy 10 or 11 minute extract, which is all about the nodes. I'll also talk a little bit about the importance of the moon when we've got the axis of Taurus and Scorpio highlighted, keeping in mind that, of course, Taurus is the sign of the exaltation of the moon and Scorpio where the moon is in her fall. And then I also briefly mentioned the lungs and the large intestines as organs of intake and exhale or release. So there's a lot of themes that you'll hear about, but these themes are all tied to this transit of the North Node through Taurus and the South Node through Scorpio. If you're interested in more training on the nodes, I'll share some links in the notes section below about some of my classes that are about the nodes in traditional astrology or the nodes by transit. So if you want to learn more, there'll be resources for you. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. As the nodes move through Taurus and Scorpio, I'm drawn into a deeper reflection of and connection to the specific needs, dreams, and desires of each of these signs, of how Taurus wants to enjoy pleasure, to be in the body, and craves moments of beauty and connection, and of how Taurus really wants to be in the present, and of how Scorpio can sometimes struggle to settle, but wants to feel really deeply, or how it constantly questions and explores and strategizes, going over and over the past to try to understand more or find an answer that will make things make sense. And of how all these tendencies and desires are intensified for each of us and in the collective for the 18 months that the nodes move through Taurus and Scorpio. The nodes in Taurus and Scorpio are ruled by Venus and Mars. And here we arrive at some of the astrological inspiration for today's talk, that of dancing between pleasure, as symbolized by Taurus and Venus, and sadness or discomfort, as symbolized by Scorpio and Mars. Now, I'm not for one second saying that the only important things about Scorpio and Mars is that there can be some pain associated with them, but rather I'm trying to express my thoughts about how this specific combination of the South Node in Scorpio might feel. And I'm thinking about how the transit of the nodes through a sign can really agitate or unsettle the topics and areas of life associated with that sign, especially the transits of the South Node, and how Scorpio is linked to deep and buried intense emotions, especially of the Marsy kind, things like anger, resentment, frustration, rage, betrayal, sadness, and hurt. They're not happy, joyful kinds of feelings. They might be sharp or strategic or divisive. Taurus and Venus topics are also likely to be unsettled thanks to the generally churning nature of the nodes. You might notice that your connection to things like pleasure, delight, and enjoyment is unsteady or not as consistent as you might like. Or that these areas of your lives need to be redefined and even reawakened. The North Node transiting Taurus can amplify and make us slightly obsessed about Taurus and, by extension, Venus things. We might notice an insatiable hunger for more connection and closeness. We might crave sweetness or simplicity, or feel driven to create more stability and calm in our lives. We might really need to learn how to be in our body. The South Node transiting Scorpio likewise can help us shift perspective about Scorpio and, by extension, Mars things. This might include new understanding about vulnerable and difficult feelings, or awareness of how some emotions might reveal an uncomfortable truth. In this swirling, churning transit of the South Node through Scorpio, you might be able to shift an entrenched habit or behavior, or uncover a previously hidden obstacle. You might get clear on the who, what, how, or where of a situation that is emotionally draining or taxing, or that stirs anger inside you. Both Taurus and Scorpio are loyal and enduring, with a tendency to stay the course and stick with commitments. The nodes here then might create movement in areas of life that are really established. Maybe they're stuck, but maybe you like them being steady and constant. Taurus and Scorpio are also signs that move at a slower pace. So moving more slowly in general through life may be necessary. This might allow you time to connect more fully with the pleasure of a moment or an experience, or to be aware of when a pain point arises. You might be, as the nodes tour Taurus and Scorpio, you might ask yourself questions like, what is pleasure and what is pain? You might be exploring how to make space for pleasure even amidst your pain, like the family we just heard about. You might be wondering how to enjoy what you love while still honoring what hurts, or the ways in which you've been wounded and haven't yet healed. Another question worth exploring as the nodes move through a pair of zodiac signs ruled by Venus and Mars might be, is togetherness pleasure? Is it pain? Is it a mix of both? And it may be time to redefine pleasure itself and to explore what gets in the way of experiencing pleasure. One thing I've learned is that our pain, sadness, and suffering contributes to our ability to feel compassion, and that compassion is a critical emotion for connection. To create connection, we have to be willing to feel with others. Your own familiarity with pain, with suffering, and with sorrow can help you connect with other people. Pema Chodron writes, only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Your own pain and suffering can be helpful in your process of connecting with and deepening ties with those around you. So there's almost a type of equation here. Pain can help us develop compassion, which in turn supports connection. And as a little extra, pain can also inspire creativity, which is also a pathway to connection. One other thing, there we go. Don't give the Pisces the tech gadgets. We got it back, so thank goodness. So one other thing I noticed when I was reflecting on when I was prepping today, is that Taurus and Scorpio are the signs of the moon's exaltation and fall. And as the nodes move through these signs, we might find ourselves connecting with a more full spectrum of life's emotional extremes. In Taurus and Scorpio, the moon experiences her highest heights and her lowest lows. So what are the extremes that this might show for us all in the months ahead? How might we enhance or make use of the nourishing and stabilizing powers of Taurus while navigating any of those unsettled feelings, or that feeling of that quality of instability that comes with the South Node moving through the sign of the moon's fall? We know that steady cycles and routines support the body, the nervous system, and that they help create feelings of calm and safety. Our body and our emotional self need regular cycles, and they need to be consistent and reliable. This is the moon in Taurus. These essential rhythms and routines can go awry when the moon is in Scorpio. Here things become irregular, inconsistent, and sometimes unreliable. Someone we might rely on could let us down. We might struggle to maintain consistency. We might be unsure about who to trust or what decision to make. And this can create tension in our emotional state and within our physical body. So this kind of moon axis, if you like, with the moon exalted in Taurus and in fall in Scorpio, might show us life's essentials like finances and food. And in these areas, we might also see great uncertainty and instability, along with structural change as the nodes move through these signs, as they kind of unsettle
that which we rely on most for survival. So this thread of the moon, sorry, I beg your pardon, this symbolism of the moon via the signs of Taurus and Scorpio, it makes me think of this quote from Pema Chodron. Things falling apart is a kind of testing and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and then they fall apart. Then they come together and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, for relief, for misery, and for joy. And that quote is from a book called When Things Fall Apart, Heart Advice for Difficult Times. And I think about this coming together as a Taurus or Venus thing, and the bonding and the holding and the supporting connection. And then I think about things kind of falling apart as a Scorpio, a bit of a Mars thing, the separating, the distancing, the uncertainty around trust. And I think about each of these tendencies as being intensified or showing up in more extreme ways for the times that the nodes will tour Taurus and Scorpio. One way of conceptualizing the nodes that might be helpful is as symbolic of the inhale-exhale process. In a Pilates class recently, the teacher talked about the lungs and the large intestine as organs of intake and exhaust. And of course, the nodes are associated with the celestial dragon, the north node with the head of the dragon that takes things in, and the south node with the lower half of the body of the dragon that lets things out or releases. And yes, there is a corollary here with, bodily functions. So, it's kind of in and out. So these organs, the lungs, if you like, are involved in the process of taking in that which is essential and then removing that which has become waste or is no longer needed. And this is a little like the transit process of the nodes through the signs or even the houses in your chart. Where the north node is can show where or how you might need to inhale to take in. And where the south node is can show where or how you might need to express out to exhale. It might be that where the north node is by transit is where things are coming into your life or coming at you. And where the south node is by transit is where things are leaving your life or where things might be draining you or pulling you down. And as the north node moves through Taurus, we really want to inhale anything we can think of that is part of the Taurus symbolism. And with the south node moving through Scorpio, we really want to exhale and let out things that might relate to the Scorpio experiences. And because we're talking about the nodes, we might be a little bit obsessed about this taking in and then this exhaling out.